Hey, this is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Wednesday. It's February 16th. This will be our chart lesson for today. And quickly, several of you thought there was no chart lesson yesterday. Well, really, there wasn't a chart lesson yesterday. I did one and uploaded it, but for some reason, it YouTube made it private, and I would swear on my right hand that I didn't make it private, but maybe I accidentally clicked private. I don't know what happened, but anyway, the video was there, but it was, or actually, it wasn't private. It was just unlisted. So I don't know if I did it or if it was some kind of YouTube glitch or whatever. But anyway, I went ahead as soon as I was aware of it early this morning, I went ahead and made it live, so it's there in case you missed it yesterday, or if you missed it and you came in this evening and you see it and you're like, well, why, wonder why he's uploading two today, but that's the reason. So I apologize. I don't know if it was me or YouTube. It might have been me. Um, it's crazy as I've been running from I've got too many irons in the fire at the moment, and I'm running from one place to the next trying to do everything I need to do in a day, trying to run this website, do these videos, do my own trading, do my other, I have some other things that I'm involved in. So, and I have a family and a life too. So, it feels like it's a crazy one right now, but that's just the way my life is. I'm a workaholic anyway, so it doesn't feel like work to me, but I'm so busy I can't turn around. But anyway, it could have been my mistake. I don't know, but that's why there was no video there. But let's move on here so we can get this one up and hopefully I can get it posted properly today. But I want to take a quick look at the daily just to kind of see if we get any clues here. And you can see we did push through that midline on this. Remember, we started off with this being a range that looked like this, and then once we made the measured move, you assume that, hey, maybe it's just this is the full range and it's two tiered. And you can clearly see that we're still finding resistance at that midline of this two tiered range. We traded on through that, but by the end of the day, we closed below it. So kind of interesting. It looks like this range is still in play. The midline is still in play. Um, are we going to stay in this lower half, or will we push on through and maybe at least try to test these highs again? We will just have to see. One thing I could say here is that we do have a leg up, and then there is a two-legged correction in here now. So if we were to make a measured move from here, you could probably start here, but I'm just going to start right here because that's really where that leg started. And so if we're going to make a measured move, that gets us back up in here somewhere around shy of just shy of 4,700. So it looks like maybe 4760s or 70s or 80s, maybe somewhere in there anyway. Well, let's just look and see. Got me curious now. It's hard to judge. So that's around 42.72 and a quarter there. So that's what I'm kind of looking at. So anyway, let's move over to the 2000 tick chart and go through today's trades. Okay, here's our 2000 tick chart, and you can see we trended down fairly well this morning and found support there. And by the way, just before I forget to show you this, there was a gap on the chart from the day before, and the chart would be from the lowest point we traded to the highest point the previous day. So that gap was between this point and that point. So there's an 8-point gap in there that we had um, from the previous day that didn't get filled. And generally those get filled rather quickly. And so no surprise that we traded down to that today. And I can't remember how close we got now, but we got really close to fill. Let's just put the line on there. I want to see exactly. I mean, you can see right here is the high, and you can see where we came through over here on the other end. So So we filled that gap and a little bit more there, but that's basically where we found the support, filling that gap. So that, in my opinion, this whole sell-off this morning was to fill this gap. And notice the blue channel, we got a little spiking channel down, and notice we closed outside. It took forever, but we finally made a new low. And just before we went into this blue area, there was some FOMC meeting announcements. So you need to be flat an hour before that. And that's what the blue is. And you don't want to start trading until it kind of settles down again. And that was kind of right in here in this area. But we just didn't really get any trades after that. So you probably could have said, okay, we probably were back to normal about right here. So, and that does leave some setups here, but you can't go long right into that resistance there. So it doesn't make any difference anyway where I drew it at. But that's kind of how I saw the day. And once we filled that gap, and after the announcement, we ran higher here. And it looks like there's probably a couple of legs up here. We didn't actually make a full measured move there, and you might even measure this one from right there because that's where it kind of started. Still doesn't feel it, but just another way to look at it possibly. So anyway, that's what I think's going on today. We filled that gap, and this, you'll see this a lot on FOMC days. Prices are just kind of waiting on the news, but then you had this sell off a little early here. So they were trying, I guess once prices couldn't go higher here and you had the little failed break higher, obviously prices are going to go lower. And again, you don't want to enter about an hour prior to the FOMC announcement. So from about noon on into 1 o'clock, these are all Central Standard Times. Don't enter because you don't want to get caught in this and whipsawed. And just wait for it to settle down. A lot of times it will reset and come back. You can see here they tried to take it lower a few times, and once it failed, it's going higher. So, and we ended up making a couple of legs up, really. So, anyway, that's how I saw the day. Let's zoom in here and we'll talk about the trades. And 7 o'clock came right in this area, right in here, and we're finding strong support here. I don't see any trades, or there's no rejection here to really go long on. When we finally bounced out of there, you don't really get a setup, and then of course it fails instantly. I mean, really, there's a little bit of I didn't mark it that way, but I was just kind of playing the support because we were still looking for a new low, but really there's a bit of a range there. And if you got a setup right here, you might have taken it, but you don't. And it just kind of runs on down, and then we start trending up here. We do have a break and a new low now, and also I would have looked for a measured move here. You can see that's right about where we went to right there before we bounced. So you might have still considered all of this price action to the right here still part of that, because you see we're still finding support down here, but we couldn't really get back up to the lows there. So, but that's another way to find this target down here, another way to look at it. But notice we're running along here in this range, this tighter range here. Actually, we get a close and a new high, but I don't see anything to go short. And then we're just running along. It's just too congested. There is a failed break lower. I'd wait on a higher low here, and you come over here, and then you make another lower low. So you're still making lower lows and lower highs here. So I don't see any reason to try to go long on this. And it actually comes up and turns, and it actually breaks higher above this bullish bar. I think it does anyway. Yep, see it breaks one tick higher and then turns down. I don't know if I would wait and go short one tick below that, but from here you got plenty of room to get out. It doesn't end up mattering, but you still have to be concerned about that and play it that way. So just keep that in mind. And this turns out to be a pretty good trade. And that's really the first trade. The first trade we had this morning was almost 9 o'clock. And first one I saw that I'd be willing to take. And so you have to be a little patient. But that one pays off. If you catch that one, you maybe catch a runner, and off to the races it goes. And of course, you run down on the yellow, you get a break, couple of swings to a new low, and then we're just kind of chopping sideways. But there's still a downward bias here. And notice how we make that high, we test it once, we test it twice. And so you got a triple test there right at the midline. You can see that midline coming into play both times. Nice bearish bar. If you got room to get out to here, just take it. And all you really get's a scalp out of that. Then it bounces. There's a nice reversal here, but it's right back into the upper resistance. Sure, it can push on through, but with a 23 tick signal bar going long into that resistance in a downtrend, that's not a very high probability trade. Yes, it does work, but it's not worth risking, and I don't think you want to go short there either. And then of course we're just chopping along, and we get another triple test here, so it's really like almost a repeat pattern. The only difference is this is an engulfing bar, so you could go short right there, or you could wait till this one closes. It works either way. You might want to consider this support right here, although at this point I still think this is more of a failed breakout, and maybe this range just expanded like so. Now if you did look at it this way, then you got to be a little concerned because we've been bouncing there. So it's support or bouncing, however you want to look at it. But with a triple test that couldn't go higher and an overall bias downtrend, it's probably worth taking that trade. Just depends on how you looked at it and saw it there. So I liked it. It's real close to being able to say this is green, because that's definitely congested. But again, we're in this big downtrend, and you got a triple test there. So it fails and breaks out. Again, this is your signal bar. Technically, this is your signal bar, so no setup here. There's a lower high here, but right into support. It would have worked, but it could easily bounce sooner than that. And I just don't see anything through here I like. You probably do want to look at this range separately here. I originally had it drawn here in the expansion on it, but I think you could look at it this way. And this one is tempting because you could say, hey, there's a first entry, second entry that fails. Either way, it's a lower high with a big bearish bar. I didn't mark it. But that's a possibility. I mean, you should probably argue for it to be at least green, because that is a nice bearish bar, and we still have. I mean, the bias is flatter here now, so that's the concern there. It's definitely a flatter bias. Triple test here, but no signal bar. There's a lower high here, but when this one didn't go much lower than that, and then this one you got a couple of bounces right off that midline and EMA. It was an engulfing bar, so I mean that's another one you could argue to be green, but I think it's just better to wait and get more clarification, because it's really hard to see what's going on here. And of course we do break higher. You test it once, you test it twice, and then you get this big huge bearish bar, and now you got some room back to both of those midlines, so that's the better place to enter. And that turns out to be a nice trade. You may not could get in this one because it does gap over and kind of take off. So I don't know if you'd have got in it or not, but it's worth considering. We come back, we test it again, go lower, and you get a lower high here. And that's another one that you could maybe, I'd say you might look at to go ahead and trade it. But when it makes this inside bar, now you got a sure congestion right there, and so you're having to go short below an inside bar. And I had this conversation with somebody in the forum today on a trade pretty much just like this, and But that's why I would not mark that trade. If it would have broke on below that bar, then you got a good idea it's probably relatively bearish. But when you get that big bearish bar and the next bar can't even make an equal low, even though that's still a relatively bearish bar, it looks more like an indecision bar. And that changes the whole look of that. So no trade there. You do bounce down here. I don't see any longs here either. It's too close to resistance. And same thing, you break out, you get a lower high, but that's congestion, and that's not a very good signal bar. You finally make a failure. You break higher right there and turn down. So now you got a failure. So maybe you go short right there. If you wait till down here, you don't have a setup. And because it kind of looks, again, similar to what we saw right over here. You get that inside bar, so you don't want to go short below that. So if you didn't take this on the engulfing bar, there's no trade here. And then you tried to go higher again, and you get a little trap here. It breaks higher, fails, and now you got a big bearish bar. I pretty much like that one for it to go on lower. So, okay, I'm sorry. I had to take that call. It was an emergency call. But anyway, I liked it. It is a little congested, but with that failed breakout and the fact that we've tried to go higher once, twice, three, four, and technically this is a double top, and this is a first entry and a second entry. So this is going to act as a trap, and you can see how, boom, off it goes. So I like entering on either one of those. This one, you couldn't enter down here, so it had to be on the engulfing bar. I probably should change that to green since it is only the engulfing bar, because sure as shooting, somebody will ask me 500 questions about that particular trade. But the reason it's a little, if you're good enough to trade an engulfing bar, which you need to be more advanced, that's a pretty good setup. But if you wait till this closes, it never breaks below it, then you get an inside bar before it breaks below it. Inside bars are not reliable, so don't trade those. Even if it's a trap, it needs to be a really good one before you trade an inside bar, and that's not a very good one. So no trade there. And of course we run down and we finally make a new low, and then look how we rally back up. Let me zoom back in here. But look what happens. You run up, you get a first entry, second entry, it fails. So you got a short, a failed second entry short there after a failed break lower, and after the trend channel had a break and a new low. So I like going long. I really thought we'd probably go higher than we did there. You can see it found a little resistance close to that midline. It still works. I still liked it because of the trap. You'll probably get a scalp out of it at a minimum, and of course it's getting close to 12 too, so you got to think about that. But usually my cutoff is 12 noon, and if you're already in a trade, you could still manage it into noon. Just be flat. Just don't take any new trades before noon. I'd be flat, at least 10 or 15 minutes before 1 o'clock. Don't try to carry it too close, because you might get whipsawed, and you don't want that. And of course, stay out of this because it's craziness. And you can see even here, the price action works. You failed out the top of the range. You made a lower high. You came down. You failed out the lower part. You came back up and you tested and found support. You got a triple test there. Then it went higher. Then it runs up here and barely gets above that high, and it backs up again. It tests this support all over again before it takes on off. And so the price action is still valid. It just moves so fast and it's so volatile. You just don't want to be in that when the news comes out. And unfortunately, you don't get a chance to catch any of this move here. There is a second entry. Technically, that's not a second entry. You got a new high, and then you go first, and then second. But it makes another new high. It's just too congested, too far away from the EMA. Just no setup there. And then, of course, now the bottom falls out. There's a lower high here, but you can't go short right into that trend line because it may bounce right there. But, of course, it runs on down, and it tries to go higher and fails. And so that's a failed second entry long. But I don't think I'd take a failure there yet, because that looks a little sideways. Even though you may make a new low, we could shoot on up, and because we're going to probably try to test this high. after the break. And of course, we just end up, you make a low, you test it once, you test it twice. And so now you got a triple test. Technically, you got a second entry long here, a little ways away from the EMA. Notice the break and 2 legs down, and you got a new low. There's a first entry, second entry, so that you could look at that as a possible failed second entry short. That far away from the EMA, so you might trade that. You're better off to wait on the higher low, which comes here, and then even though that's bullish, it's really close to whether that's the upper 130s. Probably close enough, but it really looks congested too. So another one you might take. Not crazy about it, but there's reasons to take it. Looks like we've gone into a range here, and with a triple test, we'll probably bounce there. So again, you could look at that as a double bottom, and you get a first entry, second entry that fails and goes higher. It didn't quite get back to the EMA, so I'm not crazy about marking that one either, although it is right off the key entry point. So it's another one you could argue to be green. Of course, we come up here. It looks like we get a little bit of an overshoot. And then you try to go higher once, and there's a second entry right off that key entry point. But this is why when you're this far away from the EMA, you don't go long, because that'll happen to you. And it fails instantly. And the odds are we're coming back to the key entry point, or I'm sorry, the EMA. And you can, so that's a nice trap. I like trading that. And you can see there's a trend line there. And again, it looks like we get a little overshoot. We still get a break, a new low, and that takes us into 230. We really end up just chopping sideways. And if you measure this, you can see we went exact measured move based on the size of the range, and it turns back down. And again, that is what time does that happen? That happens at 2:31. That's a minute. I mean, you might even, it's such a big bar though. It's, how many ticks were in that bar? I don't know what's going on here. I can't get my, anyway, I'm not even gonna try it again. One more time. No, I don't know what's wrong. My mouse has been acting crazy. I'm gonna have to get a new mouse, I guess. I thought the batteries were bad. I changed them and that helped, but I'm still having little issues with it. So I don't know if it's my mouse. It seems like every time we do that, Microsoft does a software update, I have problems with my mouse for a day or so. I usually have to restart my computer a couple of times, and then all of a sudden it quits. So I don't know if there's some correlation there to it or not, but it seems like every day now, at least once a week, Microsoft's doing an update. It's getting frustrating, but you know, now they want to take us to Microsoft 11, so probably so they can sell us more software, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, you get that measured move and that big bearish bar, but I just think that bar is too big to be after 230. Just don't mess with it. If you took it, no, I wouldn't tell you did too much of the wrong thing, but I'm not gonna mark it. So, but that's the way I saw it today. So. Compared to yesterday, it was not quite as easy as a trading day, not nearly as many trades. Plus, we had the FOMC stuff in there. It took an hour or so out of the day. Well, it's probably not an hour. Well, it's at least an hour because you lose from 12 to 1, but usually it's about 15 or 20 minutes after that. Today, it looks like it was about 15 to 20 minutes or so. So you lose an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and 30 because of that FOMC announcement. And then there just weren't many setups in the afternoon. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week. Hope you had a good trading day. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.